Hey, how you doing?
I can't even put into words how I'm doing to sit here with you.
Oh my gosh. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
You're beyond special. I don't even have words. Words are not good in these situations. What
Oh,
can I do with words right now? Nothing. I'm like every other girl who is just aware of how special and incredibly soulful and sensitive and smart and talented you are. So that's a lot to be able to just act cool and be with that, but I'm going to do it. I can do
can you do
this.
all of my interviews today?
I would love to. So we're going to get right down to it. We're going to talk about your new album, but I want to hear a little bit about your journey because everyone who listens to this show is seeking more purpose in their life. It's about doing your life's work, and from a young age, you've been called, right? You were called to do music. I want to know about that. Like, when did that happen for you? And when did it become something you wanted to really step into versus this cool thing that everyone else told you that you could do?
Well, how far back you want to go? Like way back?
Like 8 years old, like you started when you were five, right? Playing piano.
Yeah, so long story short, my sister was taking piano lessons from my cousin Georgia. And I was like 3, and I loved
Oh my.
listening to her play. And so after she would have her lesson, I would sort of go and plink some of the notes that I heard. And I just found it fascinating that you could sit up in front of this big wooden machine and play these keys and notes would come out. It was just, I guess how you see kids skiing down a mountain or swinging a golf club when they're like 2 or 3. There's just something that brings them
Yeah.
to do that. And so that was me. And then my mother, who came from a musical family, kind of recognized that I was really interested in it. So we had a upright piano in the house, and I was so interested. Like all I did was play all the time. So they saw that, my parents saw that, and they made sure that I had access to, education. And that's really what did it, because as we all know, I think the idea of empowerment and ownership
Yeah.
is paramount for young people, to let them know that anything is possible. And I had that. So that was a big plus for me.
So they saw you and they encouraged you. And
Yeah.
then I saw a clip of you when you were like 14, so cute. And you're like, "Yeah, I want to tour, but it's harder, being a jazz musician." Like, at what point did you want this dream, or did you never really think that it would become what it became?
No, what's crazy, and I say this as modestly as I can. I always knew that this was the only thing I was going to do. A, because I loved it, and B, I wasn't good at anything else. Like this is true. I was a terrible student in school. I probably had ADHD, but there was no diagnosis for it then. I mean, I was a horrible student. When my mother died when I was 13, everything went off the rails. I'm not a good athlete. I can't do any of that. So thank God I had this love for music, and all I did was play. But when you look at the circumstances in which I was able to learn and perform, I had like the best teachers and mentors on the planet. I had people who were so good at what they did that it just drove me to be better and better and better. And like my buddies who are a few years older than me are among not the greatest of their generation, but probably the greatest that ever played the instruments, like Wynton Marsalis and Branford Marsalis. And they were like 5, 6 years older than me. And those were the people who were saying, hey, keep playing. And so it was like a perfect storm for somebody that had my desire, because I had the right time, the right education, the right opportunities to play. And I never thought that I would ever do anything else.
And what did you feel like when you played music? Did you feel like you were just transported, or like you were channeling some divine something? Like, did you have that feeling and recognition from a being a little kid?
Well, it's yeah, when I was little, I felt like that. I felt like, oh, this is really cool. And then when I started to become probably around 7, 8, or 9, like right around the time you can distinguish between right and wrong, and your brain starts to understand things in a more complex way, I started realizing that I'm not all that. Like this, I'm, oh yeah, I love to play, but then you start seeing you getting instructed by teachers who could play anything you could play a lot better, you know. So I started, and the way they teach is not warm and fuzzy. So they don't really say, oh, you're so talented, you're so good. Like, I remember my teacher, Ellis Marsalis, saying you should consider quitting music and taking up another vocation because you don't have what it takes. I mean, not that statement on a regular basis, but constant brutal critique. Like, I remember when I did American Idol, people were saying, oh, you're so harsh on the kids. I said, you have no idea. You know, I don't like, that's not who I am, but boy, that's who my teachers were. They did not screw around. They were preparing you to be, you know, monster musicians.
Yeah.
And it was, so no, it wasn't like I would go play to lose myself. I would play to understand my craft.
Yeah.
And then when I got a little bit of knowledge, it would be an amazing feeling of liberation, back to the woodshed and say, God, I'm terrible. I need to practice, you know, but that's the way it is with anything, you know, you have to learn.
That's incredible. And it's so generous for you to show that behind the scenes, but it's important because I think people look at someone like you or any other master, Serena Williams, and it's easy to think like she just woke up this way. And you're saying like, no, I had to show up in that resilience over and over again so that you could merit this level of mastery, right? Like that's an incredible thing.
What's incredible to me is that we all have something that we can. I tell my kids all the time, give yourself something to edit. And what I mean by that is, if you want to write a book or take a picture or design a dress or become a doctor or whatever it is, you can't, that doesn't exist. And a lot of times I think people are fearful of doing something they really, really love to do. So they'll never start that podcast or they'll never start the book. But if you write the first page or if you do your first podcast, you'll give yourself things upon which to improve. And that's where the excitement comes in. You can't possibly compare yourself to somebody like Serena Williams when you go to your first tennis lesson.
Right.
Or if you never pick up the racket, I'll never be that good. You can't do that. And the problem with living now with social media is you're seeing the best of everything immediately. So it has an effect on the natural growth process. I can promise you, I don't know, I mean, I met Serena Williams one time, but I'm sure those training sessions were ugly and nasty and painful. And that's what it takes in anything. You know that. I mean, you know, it takes a lot of work.
I love what you're saying because you're giving people permission to start, you know, just like start and improve. And you are measuring yourself against your own yardstick, not against something else.
That's right.
So then it does happen for you, right? You move to New York, you're what, like 18? And is your big break When Harry Met Sally, is that like the big moment for you? How does that happen? How did that all come out?
Well, I would call the big break signing with Columbia Records because that's something I always wanted to happen. So when I moved to New York, I had a contact there at Columbia Records. I ended up signing with them. That was the big break. The huge break was When Harry Met Sally. And long story short, there was a guy named Bobby Colomby. And Bobby Colomby is this beautiful man who used to be the drummer with the group Blood, Sweat, and Tears. Bobby's brother, Harry Colomby, was the manager of a jazz musician named Thelonious Monk. I used to imitate Thelonious Monk for years. He was my hero. So Bobby Colomby, who was now an executive at Columbia Records, heard me and thought I reminded him of this musician, Thelonious Monk. And I also looked like his brother. So I think he felt a kinship there.
Yeah.
So one of Bobby's good friends is Rob Reiner, who had just directed this film. And Bobby said, I need some background piano for this movie. I know a guy for you. He's this kid, he's 20, he's from New Orleans. And so I went to Los Angeles and I basically, if you can imagine like a giant auditorium with a huge screen. And Rob said there'll be a green line that goes across that screen. And when it reaches the end, you play. So it was just me sitting at a piano in a huge room with a movie screen.
That's so intense. That's
Well,
so
no, it
hard.
really wasn't, because this would be like, it would be like you know, with your best friend,
Okay.
um, and I say, listen, when I say go, I want you to have a cup of coffee with your
Okay.
best friend and just say what you did today. I mean, it was that easy. That's what I do. I'm a piano player. So
Right.
I watched the line go across the screen, and Billy Crystal and Meg Ryan were up there, and I said, you just want me to play like what I see? And he said, yeah. So I did, and then a red line would go across the screen, and I would finish, and that was it. I'm like, seriously? Like, that's fun, right? So he said, I want you to sing this one song. It's called It Had to Be You, and that'll be it. So I did that. And then there were a bunch of other artists who had songs in the movie, like Frank Sinatra, Ella Fitzgerald, Ray Charles. For different reasons, their management didn't want them on the soundtrack, couldn't work out the deal. So like when Ray Charles, who had Winter Wonderland, couldn't be on the soundtrack, Rob said, I need you to sing Winter Wonderland or play it. And when Ella Fitzgerald couldn't do I Could Write a Book, he said, I need you to, and before you knew it, I had the whole album. So this album came out, the movie was a huge hit, and it was just like, I went from selling 10,000 records to, you know, millions of records, and it just completely changed my life.
What was that like for you? Because you are such a good, you're so grounded. You've been married to the same incredible woman for all these years. You're so grounded. And then all of a sudden you're just like thrust into, I mean, you were so famous so fast. How did you receive that without feeling like you were going to sabotage it because you were afraid of it? You clearly were able to ride it and not lose yourself.
Well, I wanted it. I mean, I wanted the opportunity to play, but there was an undercurrent of influence that was very, very powerful from people like my mother, my father, my manager, who I've been with now for 35 years, this
Oh my
incredible
God.
Jamaican woman who, you know, is the reason we're now. So there were people in my life who didn't tolerate anything but, you know, being cool. You know, like don't let the stuff go to your head. And I wasn't always successful. I can think of many times where, you know, I was an idiot. You know, I was 23, 24, you know, you start making money, you start getting famous. And, you know, many times, you know, someone might say, you know, can I have your autograph? It's like, I'm eating dinner right now. And, you know, and then I go to bed like, oh, why do you do that, man? Like, and you learn, you know, very quickly that this is an incredible gift. And the people for whom you're playing are the reason that you're able to enjoy that. So you better cut that crap out. And there was for every one of my dad, there was a cousin or an aunt or somebody. And if I acted, you know, a certain way in public that wasn't appropriate, I would hear about it. And they don't play that. They said, you don't forget who you are. You're nothing. You're nothing special. You know, you're a human being. Act with dignity, act with grace. And you know, you hear that enough, you start trying to do it. I'm not saying I always did it, but I tried, you know.
Well, you so did do it. That's what everybody loves about you. When people talk about you, it's not they love you. Nobody likes you. They adore you because of your, I'm telling you, there's an earnestness that comes from everything you do, every note you play. It's so powerful because the world is so devoid of love, and you give love. You give love to everybody. And that's just from you. It's not because someone earned it or deserved it. You're so generous in the
Well,
way that you show up.
I appreciate that. I mean, it's these things are hard to hear, especially when, like one time, we had breakfast at our house. Our house was kind of formal. Like my mother and father were in the public eye. They were politicians, and they grew up in a generation where you just didn't kind of walk around in shorts and barefoot around the house, you know? And so we had this Sunday breakfast one day, and it was my mom, my dad, me and my sister, and this guy. And this guy came over, and he had a suit on, and you know, I'm like 10. I really don't want to be there, and we're having breakfast, and yeah, yes, sir, you know, sir, and you know, I come from the generation where it was, you know, don't speak unless you're spoken to. So we would say there and we would be quiet. And this guy would say, so, you know, Harry Jr., what did you do? Oh, I did this. Yes, sir. You know, and I figured he was a celebrity or politician or something. Well, a couple weeks later, my mom I'm with her getting her oil changed, and there's this guy in his mechanic's outfit covered in oil or whatever. I'm like, that's a dude who was at our house. She's like, yeah, that's Mr. Smith. It's like, well, what was he doing there? She's like, well, he's a nice man, and we appreciate him. And it clicked in my mind, like, oh wait, you don't have to be like a big celebrity to like come dress up and come have, and it sounds very basic, but when you see that example, I don't care who you're talking to, young, old, black, white, gay, straight, whatever religion, I try to love all of them, not tolerate them or accept them, love them. And I find I'm at so much more peace for me. When I go to bed at night, I pray for the people that have given me problems, almost before I pray for the people that I love. If I've run into somebody and I've had a bad exchange, I say, please help this person understand me. And I just feel so much lighter like that. You know what I'm saying? Just love people. It's so much easier.
It's so good. It's so good.
Thank you.
It's so beautiful. It reminds me of a quick story, which I didn't think I would tell you, but it's just so beautiful. So my rabbi's wife was in New York City getting ready. It's Rosh Hashanah. It's like the biggest day of the year. She's like planning all this stuff, and she's late for shul, the synagogue, because everyone's already gone. She's getting the house ready, and she walks outside, and this homeless man walks up to her on Rosh Hashanah, which is like the biggest holy day. And he says, can I come to your house for a meal for the high holidays? And he's clearly a homeless person. And she thinks for like 1 second, and then she says to him, yes, yeah, I'll be back, And he starts to walk away, and they're living in the city. So she starts running after him. She says, you don't know my apartment. You don't know my address. And he says, I just wanted to know what your answer would be.
Wow.
And that story has never left me, and I've never told that to anybody, but.
Can I tell you one that I've never told to anybody?
Oh my God. Yes.
All right. So I have to tell this story to give you the ending, but I would rather leave out the part that shines light on me, but I have to tell that part. So I was doing a movie in New Orleans, and every day I would drive past this particular area under the Claiborne Bridge where there were 50 homeless people every day, sleeping in tents, whatever. It bugged me. So I decided to go to McDonald's and, buy, 100 Egg McMuffins or whatever it was. So I put all the stuff in the car and I brought it to him. And I noticed when I was handing it out that they weren't like particularly effusive, right? They just kind of took it, and I just thought that I didn't care, but I just thought that was interesting. Well, I was in New Orleans, my dad was there, and I really wanted my dad to know that I did this so he'd be proud of me, which is not the reason I did it, and I shouldn't have thought about it, but I'm telling you this to be as frank with you as I can. So I was looking for the right opportunity to tell my dad, so I didn't want to make it sound like, Dad, I gave all this food to these homeless people. I was telling the story from the perspective of how they responded to it, because I figured that would be more casual. So I said, Dad, I gave this food to these homeless people, and they weren't like really thankful. They just kind of took it. And I was expecting, oh, that's interesting. You'd think they would be thankful. You know what he said? They treated me the same way when I brought them food. He had never told me that story. And it would hit me like a brick wall. Like, I learned so many lessons that day. You don't need your right hand to know what the left hand is doing all the time. Why are you doing this? Are you doing this for you? Are you doing this for praise for you? Or are you doing it for those people? Are you really doing it for those people? And the fact that my dad didn't tell me that, the fact that he did it and didn't tell me that, and I'm like, what else has he done? And it was a great lesson in humility and love. And, that's just like what I can sense you try to do. That's what I try to do. I just try to be better, man. Try to be better. In the title track on this album, Alone With My Faith, there's the bridge. And you know what a bridge is in music, right? So in the bridge, it says, I just gotta work a little harder right now. I just gotta dig a little deeper right now. I just gotta look a little closer at myself. Take my time, keep my faith. That is a bridge for a reason, because if I can get across that bridge, metaphorically and literally, and I was on the other side. So yeah, I don't know how we got here, but it's nice to share these stories.
I mean, we've done almost 400 episodes. That was probably the most powerful thing that's ever been said.
Oh,
So
wow.
thank you so much for this. So going back to the amazing life that you've been living, because I definitely want to talk about this record, but I am curious too. So you're doing all this music, it all starts to be just like a dream, and then you start acting. How does that happen? How did you get into acting? Did you know
Well, I
you
did
were?
it in high school. Like I was in, musicals in high school, and I was performing all the time. I loved being on stage. I loved seeing people clapping and smiling and, appreciating what I was doing. That's just my personality. I love to be on stage. And so when I was, I guess, I was probably 20. I was in Los Angeles playing at this small club, and a woman who was a casting director for a film called Memphis Belle said, "There's a military movie. Would you like to audition for it?" And I was like, that'd be great. I auditioned, and I had a very small part, but it was kind of a test to see if I even liked making movies. And I did. I liked it a lot. And so I continued to do that. I started to do television, started to do Broadway, which kind of brought it home for me since I had done that kind of stuff in high school. So it all felt like the same type of creativity, just in different genres.
Do you have a favorite movie that you've done?
Um, I've had some that I've really enjoyed doing. Like I just actually released one called Fear of Rain, and
No.
I got a chance to work with this incredible young actor named Madison Eisman.
You
She's just
guys were so good together, and you have 3 daughters, so it's like you could
my
feel the
fourth.
chemistry. You have 4 daughters?
No, she's my fourth.
Oh, she's your 4th.
Yeah, we've adopted her. We've become very close to her, and my
You could
family.
feel it. It was
Yeah,
so
she's
good.
special, and that doesn't always happen in a film, But I was playing her dad, and it was tough. The reason I say it was it was one of my favorites is because I was so emotionally exhausted after doing it. I mean, it was really tough because she played a girl that was suffering with
Yes.
schizophrenia, and to be. I've seen that in my personal life, but I've also dealt with it in the movie, and it's very hard to watch. And so it was a great education for me, and it was a profound experience. Other movies have just been, lots of fun. Like I've met some amazing people like Sandra Bullock, Renee Zellweger, and Hilary Swank, and those movies weren't as heavy, but just to be around these women and to watch them and learn from them has been an amazing thing.
We just watched, my 9-year-old and I just watched Hope Floats. I was like, it's
Oh,
one of my
really?
favorite movies. And you're just so good in everything you
Oh,
do. And
well, I appreciate that. Though,
you
when you're
are.
working with people like Sandy Bullock, when you're around her, you understand why she's a movie star. And within a second of being around her, you're like, oh, I get it. Because when you're talking to them, like we're talking right now, you're not yourself. You're the character, and you sort of transform into this other world. And after the scene is over, you're like, oh, what just happened? So there's a reason that these folks are who they are. They have these amazing talents that make you better, I think.
That's amazing. And I love that movie. And I think it's actually a good transition into this album because I was just watching it again for like the 20th time. And I love just how this movie is. There's a line where there's the narration says she didn't know how strong she was. And we face these things, right? And every character in that movie is going through something, right?
Yes.
Bernice is going through something, and Bertie's going through something, and even the husband's going through his thing, and the mom passes away, and the father's got Alzheimer's. And it's just this moment, this slice of life moment where you have to be with what's really hard to be with. And this pandemic has been just that. We've had to sit with a lot, and we've had to get still so that we actually face things we've been running from, in addition to how hard this is.
Yes.
And you went on this journey and went alone off into a studio and wrote this record. What did you want to convey? What was it about this record that you hope might give people strength?
Well, like you say, we have all gone through things, and we all go through things. And for example, when my wife Jill was diagnosed with breast cancer almost 8 years ago, it was absolutely terrifying. And anybody, I'm sure everybody that's watching this right now or listens to this right now knows exactly precisely what that feeling is like. You feel helpless, you feel alone, you're scared,
Yeah.
it's just the worst. Well, those are feelings that we may share in different circumstances, but they are personal to us. The interesting thing about the pandemic is that we're sharing the same experience.
Yes.
I've never known that before. I think we're
Yeah.
the only people on the planet who have ever experienced this. Is this, people who are living this right now, because I think the Spanish flu or whatever happened, the last time. So I wanted to give people a sense of not only comfort that they know I'm going through it, but I needed to know that they're going through it. I need to know that you are feeling what I'm feeling, because what the hell is happening right now? Like, this is crazy. I mean, not only the pandemic, but just the whole state of the world. Things are like, sometimes my daughters will say, like, this is a pretty strange time right now, right? And I'm like, yeah, no, this is weird. This is weird time. And
Sure.
I did it for myself, sort of therapeutically. And I was prepared to admit that I don't, I'm struggling here. Like, sometimes I felt like my faith was really strong, and sometimes I really questioned it. Like, man, who's out there? Like, are you watching all this? Are you hearing me? And
Yeah.
and I felt okay with talking about that and singing about that. So the album is basically for people who have some sort of faith. It doesn't have to be Christian faith, but the idea that we have this gift to compel us to believe in something greater than us. I think most of us share that.
Yeah. And I think that God expects us to question these things, right? To
Yeah,
like
no, absolutely.
wrestle with this. Like, I think that would only make sense. And it's so brave to come out and say what everyone else is actually feeling. And you played a bunch of the songs that everyone knows, like Amazing Grace, but you also wrote a bunch of songs. And so was that cathartic for you through the process? Did you feel like you found strength in that?
I did, and I've never written a song that helped me as I was writing it. Like, if you say go into a room and write a song about a breakup or about falling in love or whatever it is, great. I love that. I love to do that. I love to fantasize and pretend and create scenarios and circumstances from maybe a different perspective. But I actually, when I sang, I just got to work a little harder right now. Like, I was really speaking to myself, like, you need to work harder, and you need to look a little closer at yourself and figure out how to navigate this, not only as a human being, but as a dad, as a husband, as a member of the community. And I've never had that experience before.
What do you think about faith in general? Because I feel like for me, it took me like a year to say the word God on this podcast. I had gone to Jerusalem after college for like a 2-week stint, and I stayed for 3 years, and I became really connected. And I was like, oh, in LA, where I've been living for 17 years, that's like a taboo thing to talk about faith. Like, nobody wants to hear about it. But I feel like people are so thirsty for it. Whatever you call it, people are thirsty to connect with something bigger. And I think it takes a lot of guts from you to do a record like this from some people's perspective.
Yeah, maybe from some people's perspective, but I mean, is it really taboo? I mean, like, when you look at, I'm not talking about arguing about religion, but speaking about faith, I've never had a problem with that. Like, I've never, maybe you're saying, like, if you say it, then people are going to turn off the podcast or turn away. But I don't look at the world like that. If I see somebody talking about Buddhism, I'm not going to, I mean, that's what you believe in.
Yep.
So, I mean, I love you and I respect you for that. I don't care what religion it is. So I've never had a problem talking about it. I'm not, I know people, and I have people in my life who are very forward about it, and everything is from their religious perspective, and they want you to know it. And I love them too. That's not how I want to do it. I remember talking to Cardinal Dolan about this in New York. I said, Your Excellency, I mentioned being Catholic one time because somebody asked me if I was religious, and that was 20 years ago. And ever since, they asked me about my faith and Catholicism, and I said, I'm not the guy. you're the guy. I'm not the guy. Why me? Like I try my best, but I try to educate myself. And he said, that's precisely why, because who wants to
Yeah.
listen to somebody who is what he said was, you're imperfect in so many ways and you have so much to learn, and most of us are exactly like that. So he said, from his perspective, he said, Harry, that's why you have that platform. And it's just like, oh, I'm like, maybe so, because my dad tells me all the time, you need to learn your faith. You need to learn it. You need to study it. And he's absolutely right. Well, what he didn't have was a Jewish mom. My mom was Jewish. My mom did not want me to be baptized in a Catholic church. She wanted me to decide for myself what religion I wanted to be, which sounds great, but what that deprives you of is that solid foundation. What it did give me was what she wanted, which was coming at it completely from my perspective. And I ended up becoming a Catholic. But yeah, I mean, it's like, I don't have a problem talking about my faith. I don't have a problem you talking about your lack of it, or your belief in Scientology or Buddhism or whatever you want to talk about. So maybe the idea of not being able to talk about religion is trendier than actually not being able to talk about it. Because I've never had a problem with it.
Yeah. Because you're just so open. And the truth is, we're all just trying to get home.
Exactly.
That's it.
I need to love you unconditionally, and period, and save the conversation about we may not believe the same thing for later, if at all, because ultimately, how does what you do affect what I do? It doesn't. What you do is your thing, and I need to celebrate that. Obviously, we're not talking about things that cause people harm or things like that, but I think most people are good people, and like you say, they're trying to do their own thing. And for me, it's very important to love everybody and realize that they're going on their own path.
Yeah. And that's so beautiful, everything you're saying. And again, very brave. Most people just don't even want to go anywhere near these conversations. So it's like what you're saying, I think is going to give people a lot of peace. Like, we could just love each other, right? We can just love each other.
Well, yeah, like, I mean, look at what, if you look at Christ, like, you're a Jewish woman who knows that Christ lived. I think most people would agree with that. But like, who has he become? Like, I see some things, I'm like, wait, this guy was a Jew who had dark skin or darker skin. And like the Bible says, he had brown and hair of wool, didn't look like me. And all he did was love, 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 love. And that's like, I want to be that guy. That's what I want to be. I'll never get there, but like, that's such a simple, perfect message. And it seems to have changed and become so exclusive. And I don't know, none of that really me.
Well, it sort of leads us to this next thing, which I was going to ask you, because ultimately, I sit here with you, which is just such an incredible gift, to do something that's going to encourage people, right? The people who are listening. And connected to what you were just saying, what I hear from my audience is just this feeling of inherent unworthiness. And it's almost as if people just feel like they have to constantly they have to earn it. They have to prove themselves, right? But love is something, like you were just talking about, it's just given. It's just grace, right? You don't have to earn it.
I wish we lived in a world where I could just look into the eyes of every single one of your listeners and say, you're much more than worthy. You're needed. We need you, and we love you. And yeah, you should maybe feel compelled to do better by your own standards. Think of yourself as this immeasurable gift of potential that can become something not only important to yourself, but to other people too. And I mean, we're only on this planet for a short time. And I really wish I could look at all of those listeners who don't feel worthy and say, oh my gosh, you have no idea. You have no idea how important you are and how individual you are and how unique you are. and how much I love you. You know, I don't know you, but I love you, you know, and, you know, I would hope they feel like that for me too, with all of my, you know, imperfections. You know, Jill, who's the closest person to me, knows me better than anybody. You know, she knows my imperfections, and she loves me. And we all need to feel that. We you can't do it without that. And
No,
from my perspective.
your words are like medicine. It's so beautiful. And it's so true what you're saying. It's just so true. What do you think when it comes down to it, people, they're going to look, at you, and they listen to you and they listen to your music, and they'll say, yeah, but he's different. He's worthy because he's a genius. He's special. Sandra Bullock, you just mentioned, she's incredible. Like, I'll never get there. And so, like you said before, there's people who don't start the podcast. They don't draw the first draft. They don't do anything because they compare themselves constantly. What do you think, if you had to boil it down and someone's listening and they want to share their gifts with the world, what do you think it requires to get to do what they love, to get to be successful at it?
Well, first of all, I think you have to define success, and I think that's a sort of happiness that comes from within. I think that's really important. But I also think it's important to be able to live with the idea that there's going to be discomfort on your journey. There's going to be times, maybe extended periods of time, where you are stuck. You are emotionally stuck, you're creatively stuck. You think you don't have anything to offer, but that no one lives a pain-free life. No one lives a life of complete bliss. But I think the key to achieving a higher level of human existence is understanding that there's an art to pain and discomfort, and it's okay to be present in that while it happens. So while you're searching for, what am I good at? I don't do anything. I'm not an actor. There is something there. You just need to take the time to figure it out and be okay with the fact that it may take some time. It may take a week, a month, a year, it may take 5 years. But like I said earlier, give yourself something to edit. If you're in a position, I don't want to oversimplify this. There's women that are listening right now that have 2 jobs and children and don't have a minute for themselves. That's not to say that these ideas can't exist in their life at some point. And I don't want to come across like, oh, everything's going to be lovely if you just, believe in yourself, because it's not that. It's knowing that if given the chance, your purpose will reveal itself to you, and know that that's there. May not be right now. You may have to get those 3 children fed, bathed, to school, and work those 2 jobs. So it may not be right now, but know that there's people like me out there that really believe in you, because nobody's bereft of potential. You know what I mean? So I think this is a tough thing to talk about, because it's easy to sound like you're oversimplifying the lives of people who are really, really struggling. And there's all kinds of things to bring into that conversation, like emotional pain. What if the person's in a bad relationship, or what if there's mental illness? So please, I speak very respectfully, considering that there are a lot of circumstances out there that you can't possibly address in this podcast. But I think at our core, we're good, and we have potential, and we are worthy. I really, really believe that.
And I've heard so many of our listeners talk about how they feel like they have a choice between being a good person and having more. That somehow, if they really received other people's kindness or money or success, that they would feel selfish or greedy. People have been taught that there's a shame in feeling good. There's a shame in having. And I want to know what you think about it. Go. No, because you have so much, but you also do such a good job of giving it back and also enjoying it. And I don't know that everybody knows that they can do that that's an option.
Well, it is. And Ignatius Loyola, the namesake of Loyola University, was someone who said that, like how can you be humble and let your light shine at the same time?
Right.
They should coexist. As a matter of fact, the Jesuits, I went to a Jesuit high school. That's their whole thing, is the coexistence of the trying to achieve your personal greatness at the same time is focusing on the little tiny things like, I love you so much. Thank you for having me on this podcast. What did you do today? How was school today, Shar? What did you learn? The everyday things. And how do I get the biggest platform I possibly can to share? They are supposed to coexist, and they can and they do. You're not supposed. I mean, in other words, if you want to change the world, you have to have an ego to have a platform.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? You're a very smart woman. You have amazing ideas. Or you could have millions of listeners as you do on your podcast. Well, you can still be this soulful, humble woman and have a major platform upon which to broadcast your beliefs. So they can coexist, and they should, I think.
Oh my God. I think that's one of the most powerful things I've ever heard. That was such a gift. That was such a gift. And I've heard Oprah say that she used to just come down to the stage every day and just say, God, use me, right? Use me. And if we're really humble, then we would want to be as big as we could be, because we want to be a vehicle for, it's God's light, it's God's love, right? So the bigger we can be, we could be in service.
That's
right?
exactly right. That's exactly right. And it's something we have to work on, something I keep saying, something I have to work on.
I'm in there too.
You know what I mean? Yeah, so it's true. I believe that wholeheartedly.
This was literally the best. Tell us where we can find your record and where we can watch Fear of Rain, because it came out a little while ago, and where we can keep following along in your awesome self.
Thank you. Well, Fear of Rain, I think you can download it or stream it on most of the platforms. And then the album, Alone with My Faith, comes out March 19th, and you can stream or download that, you know, Spotify, Pandora, Apple Music, Amazon, just the way you normally would do it. Or I think they're actually making CDs too, so you could probably buy a CD.
Well, we'll put show notes, we'll put links in the show notes and send it all out. And thank you for just making the time. And thank you for being so generous.
Oh.
You did not have to be this present, but this is, it's just so delightful to find out that the person who you just love and admire is even more than you thought. That's such a gift.
Well, I love you and I'm proud of you. And I hope that you continue this, because, we need people like you in the world. You're talented and you're phenomenal at this. My daughter, Kate, has a podcast and she's always asking me questions about how to improve. And I'm gonna tell her to listen to this because
I'll help her. I'll get on Zoom with her. I'll do whatever I can to help her.
Well, you're terrific talent, and I'm thankful for your time too.
I'm thankful to you. Thank you. God bless you. God bless your wife and your kids. You guys are gorgeous. Stay healthy.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye.